5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast. This is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe, learning from their stories and experiences as we interview overlanders from places like Australia, Africa, the Americas, Portugal, and today in Southeast Asia. You will learn the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for more adventure. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa. This is part 2 with Evelyn and Ferenc of Overlandsite.
Last week, we learned about all the inner workings of Ferenc and Evelyn's overland setup, from how they planned their current trip, how they do their cooking, their washing, bathing, all of that stuff, along with mechanical challenges you might face out overlanding.
This week, you will want to buckle up as we cover border crossings, navigation, and learn a couple awesome new tips for all overlanders.
I am super excited. These are firsts that we've not heard before. So we hope you had a great Christmas. Let's get back into the episode, Lisa. What do you say?
I say let's go, but I have to say one thing. I think I'd be the soft-hearted, partial to feeding all the animals if we were out traveling as well.
Hey, you're starting to give away parts of part 2. Your process for planning your trip, along with any daily or weekly planning that you do.
I did an itinerary before our trip, so it was quite easy because we had the deadline at the Chinese border, so I could calculate it with our time in each country.
Yes, because the trip basically for us was driving from Europe to Singapore, which included so going to Mongolia and then through China all the way through Southeast Asia, where we are now. But going into China with your own vehicle is not easy because you need permissions. You need to have a company organizing all your paperwork for you. That you can't just show up at the border and drive in. You need a guide with you who sits with you in the car all the time, and all this has to be organized before. And it costs a lot of money, so you can share the costs with other overlanders, and that's how most people do it. So there's Facebook groups where you could meet other overlanders, you can talk to them and then agree on a plan what day you would like to enter, and then you find a company together. There's a few companies out there. Some of them are worse than others. We were very lucky. We made a very good decision with ours. And basically they meet you at the border and arrange all the paperwork. You need to have a Chinese license plate, you need to have Chinese driving license, and all the other documents were in Chinese, so I don't know what they were, but they were permissions for each province we entered. So you cannot just go into China and then go anywhere. You have a set itinerary within each province. So it's not like you cannot leave the road, that's not how it is, but you cannot leave the province and go into a province that is not on your itinerary. So that's the deadline that Evelyn referred to.
Yeah, so we knew that before we enter China, we have 2 months. So I calculated with our time in each country. And I was looking for information in the internet. For example, I was looking for information in blogs, of other travelers, and also I'm always looking for UNESCO World Heritage places, and also, as I mentioned before, the Overlander application is very useful to collect many information about the route and places.
Okay. And do you remember the name of the company that you used to cross into China?
Yes, it's called Adventure Tours China, and Shang, his name is Shang, very very great guy. He's one of his teammates, Brenda. They are fantastic. I think adventuretourchina.com. Yeah, very easy. And they're based in Chengdu, which is one of the major cities. And basically, the major complaints that we hear from other overlanders is that they agree on a plan with the tour company, and let's say they agree on something like, yeah, we want to go camping as much as possible, and we don't want to pay for big highways. We want to go on rural roads and see the rural life, not the big cities. And eventually, you end up in a big parking lot in a big city where you can maybe camp, but you're still on concrete and in a big city. And what happened with us is we camped in small villages, drove on small roads. Basically, they listened to what we asked for. And that's not what happens usually.
Okay, very good. So regarding border crossings, any other tips that you've got for preparing for them?
Yeah, for example, China, we entered in the Xinjiang province, which is a very, very restricted place. They got the most cameras in the world per head, per people. It's like, I don't know if you watch the show Black Mirror, but it's basically Black Mirror stuff. And they took the car apart 6 times and they scanned it. They took away my pointy knife because apparently it's not allowed in that province and things like that. So obviously a drone would not be allowed, or I assumed it wouldn't be allowed. So what I did, for example, and that could be a tip for border crossings in general, for drones, I took away the propellers and put it in somewhere else in the car. So basically there was a drone which looked like a camera, or at least a drone which is broken. So I could say they actually recognized it's a drone, and they said, this is a no-go, and they didn't like the idea that I have a drone with me in China. So I said that it just doesn't work. You can see there's no propeller on it, and it just doesn't work. So I got away with it. So maybe hide your drone or take it apart before border crossings.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And what are you using? Is it like a Mavic?
It's a Mavic Air.
Okay.
So that's one. And maybe another tip is just prepare for very long. If you're in Central Asia, just prepare for very, very long border crossings. We had a couple of very long ones, 6 hours plus, between Turkey and Georgia.
Yeah, but before China, everything went well, and I also recommend to other travelers that prepare every papers just before the borders in some folder. This is what we did before the border crossings. Just we prepared every paper what we needed at the certain border.
Yeah, so you need the car papers, so your ownership documents, and obviously your passport and maybe travel insurance if you have. They sometimes ask for that, but mainly your vehicle ownership. It makes it complicated if your vehicle is not on your name. It's not registered on your name. I don't know what happens then, but I know it's more complicated, especially in countries in Central Asia.
Yeah, that would make it really tough.
Any specific safety planning you do or tips you can provide our listeners on safety and security?
Yes, actually, we did a bit of a planning on that. For example, Evelyn booked a first aid course just before our trip. So we went to this 1-day first aid tuition, basically. So what happens if you cut yourself? What happens if you come across an accident? What happens if these kind of things? What if someone is unconscious? How do you put them in a stable condition and things like that? So it's a very basic 1-day first aid course. That was one of the things, and we have to, and more with the equipment. We have a glass breaker on the ceiling, fixed to the ceiling, just in case from the inside if we need to escape, we can't open the doors. We have a couple of small but hopefully sufficient fire extinguishers. And we have two first aid kits, one for quick access in the back and just fixed to the fridge, and a big bag which
full of medicines, bandage, this kind of things. Yeah.
Yes, just full of medicine and bandage and
first aid kit.
Yeah, it's a small and a big first aid kit.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think,
yeah.
And we're generally very careful. Our maximum speed is 60 miles an hour. Also great for fuel consumption, but also good if you're basically not going to get surprised as much as if you're driving faster. Potholes are very sudden in this part of the world, so you have potholes that could literally break your suspension if you drive too fast and you don't avoid them. We are just careful.
Yeah, and we try to avoid driving in the dark.
Yes, we have a really powerful LED light bar in the front, but still driving at night is just obviously it happened a few times, there was occasions where we had to drive at night, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think a couple of times we got lost because the only reason was because we drove at night.
Okay, good tips.
And what are some tips you have for safe money management?
Ooh, do we have any? I mean, we separate our money into 3 different places, and we initially hid it around the car, like at least one. Now we just tend to carry all 3 of them with us in 3 different places, but I think we actually. Now you reminded us to put it back into the car, one of them at least. But I think don't keep all your money at the same place. And because we're traveling through all these countries, we weren't sure whether our bank cards would work. We have cash with us. So that's why we really need to think about it. And we did. We just don't follow up on our own plans. And other than that, I think if you plan to travel only with your bank cards, or at least partly with your bank cards, have at least 3 of those. Because I had places where we were in places where just 2 of them just didn't work for some reason. There was nothing wrong with the cards. It was just the bank or the place, and the third did eventually work.
And how do you manage changing currency as you travel?
I go back maybe half a question as well. Take US dollars with you, as well as, it depends on where you are in the world, but euros or US dollars should both work. Northern Africa, Asia, probably euros is okay as well. But you can't go wrong with the US dollars. That's our experience. And then exchanging currency, the border crossings, usually you have dodgy guys, sketchy people trying to change your money. Don't do it if it's dark, for sure. And during the day, only do it through them if you don't see an official exchange place, like an office type exchange currency place at the border. And even then, I would only do just as much money as that's enough for you to fill up your tank and maybe book a hotel or something like that if you need to, until you get to the major city in that given country, and then exchange it there. Usually you're going to get a better deal.
Okay, great. Let's go to navigation and communication. How do you make sure you know where you are and you hopefully don't get lost?
Yeah, well, we don't have paper maps. We're trying to, this is also part of our staying minimalist approach a little bit. So we have Maps.me, which we have installed on our phones, which is, I think, 90% of overlanders now use Maps.me abroad, I'm pretty sure. It's an offline map, free. It's very easy to download.
Very detailed.
Very detailed, usually reliable. Not always, but usually reliable.
Okay.
If we have internet, we use Google Maps as well. But what we do is the Maps.me is offline. However, you need a position signal, which if you don't have reception or so if you don't have mobile reception, it doesn't work even if you have a SIM card in your iPad. So we have a thing called BadElf. It's just a small GPS device, which is like a Bluetooth GPS device that connects to your devices like iPads and iPhones or smartphones. And then you have position signal even if you don't have mobile reception. So that's our setup. We have this BadElf fixed front of the windshield inside, and then that is connected via Bluetooth to our iPad, which is constantly fixed on the dashboard, which is our main map used for our main navigation and also our phones. So that's our navigation.
So the BadElf, we did a interview with Ashley with Gaia GPS. I don't know if you're familiar with Gaia GPS, but she was recommending that, but also very curious to hear from people just like you that use it. How happy are you with that BadElf? And do you know what model you've got?
I can't tell you the exact model number. I could look it up and I can send it to you. Maybe you can include it in the show notes. But basically, I have no complaints. Seriously, I bought it.
Great.
It works flawlessly with our devices.
Okay, great. And then on communication, do you just use a cell phone, or do you have any kind of UHF, VHF radio?
We have the cell phones, yes. And we have just handheld UHF radios, but only used for communication between the vehicles when we traveled in a convoy through China. That was very useful.
Okay.
But also, we tend to film and shoot quite a lot. We're trying to eventually, when we finish the trip, I'd like to put a video together. So we use the radios to direct each other. Start now. I started the camera, and then there's a radio with me, and there is one with Evelyn, and one of us are driving, and one of us are shooting. So whoever drives or whoever shoots would direct the other one to, I started the camera now, you can drive, things like that.
Okay, super smart. And do you have a backup plan to call for help if needed, like an inReach or a spot device?
No, we don't have that. We don't have that, unfortunately. I would say there was a few places where we would have been in trouble because we were really, really far away from everything. Other than that, I'd like to think there would be someone coming in a shorter time to rescue us. So the short answer is no, we don't have. But we try to be careful. But yeah.
Okay.
That is also one of the things maybe we should have brought.
And about the communication, we also use Polar Steps, so we can keep contact with our family. They can follow us live on this application.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point actually.
And what was that?
In connection with in connection with our sort of how to ask for help. Our families constantly know where we are, and that's due to BadElf too, because even if we don't have reception, there's an application called Polar Steps. It's also free, and it's basically, I think it's for people who don't want to blog or don't want to spend too much time on the internet updating pictures and where they are and all those sort of stuff. It's communicating your live position, your family or friends or whoever you share the link with, wherever you are. And you can also upload pictures, and then this application puts like a route map together for you where you've been, because it records constantly where you've been. And that's also possible for us because of our BadElf, because our phone doesn't ever lose the position signal because of our BadElf. So you can check it out. Polar Steps is fantastic if you just want to let your friends and family know where you are all the time.
That's great. That's a first. I love it. Never heard of that before.
It shows a map and the live position where you are exactly, and you can mark your steps in each country or at each places with some photos.
Yeah, it's
very nice.
Pretty good. Yeah, very good. Highly recommend it.
Love it. Okay. On vehicle maintenance and repair, we went through that just a little bit, but what was your pre-trip planning process so that you were confident in your vehicle before you left on this trip?
Okay, well, I think the main thing is Toyota. So that's we deliberately went for Toyota's reputation as the most reliable vehicle. Like one of the things, like I do love, like for example, I do love a Land Rover Defender, but I would never go on a longer trip with that because I'm just not a mechanic. I don't know how to fix stuff. I know very basic things. I wouldn't be able to touch anything in the engine bay, like other than filling up the fluids, maybe, So I really wanted a reliable car, and before the trip, we had it for 3 years. We put thousands of miles in it, tens of thousands of miles in it, and it worked fine. And so that was my first step. The second step was to get it checked out before the trip. By mechanics, by professionals, and they didn't find any issues. I had it checked before our African adventure and also before this trip. Regular maintenance is also part of our sort of preventing any repair needs. And I have basic tools with me. I have a tool bag. I have a couple of tool bags, but anything major that happens on the road, I have to admit I wouldn't be able to fix it myself.
That's smart. Know what your skill sets are. Do you guys carry one spare tire or two?
We only carry one spare tire, and we went for I think we installed it in October last year. 5 including the spare tire KO2s, BFGs. And so far, they proved to be very, very good tires. We went through some really sharp, rocky sections for hours before it went through everything. And so far, no cuts and no damage, visible damage on it. So one spare tire so far proved to be sufficient.
Awesome. Let's go through some onboard necessities real quick. How much fuel can you carry? How far does it take you? And how do you calculate your fuel needs?
So we didn't touch this part of the car either. So it's a standard fuel tank of 87 liters, or that's 23 gallons. And what we have is also a jerry can in the back, which is a standard 20 liter or 5.3 gallons, just a standard jerry can. We used to carry 2 of them. When we went to Africa, we carried 2 of them, and even that wasn't enough. But we were in a convoy, so we helped each other out. I don't find this, I think for this trip especially, this one standard tank of 23 gallons plus the jerry can is enough. It's completely enough. We filled up the jerry can in Kazakhstan and we carried it all the way to China. We never had to use it even in the most remote places of Mongolia. Eventually, you just come across a small town where they also need fuel for their vehicles, tractors or anything. And being a diesel, other than Uzbekistan, I don't think it's an issue in Central Asia. We haven't been through to Uzbekistan this time, but last time we had major problems in 2014 with diesel. But other than that, diesel is pretty much available everywhere. So our range is about 1,000 kilometers, about 620 miles, and that proved to be enough in these areas. And as I said, even in remote parts of Mongolia. Having said that, there was a few places where I was really, really hoping for a petrol station to pop up very soon somewhere. So
For example, in Africa, we ran out of diesel once just after the Sahara Desert, and we drove at least 30 kilometers with zero range, but the engine still.
Yeah, the computers show zero range, but for like 20 minutes at least, but we still didn't run out, so that was good. But I was expecting it to stop at any point, but it didn't. So that was
That
good.
made for an exciting trip.
Yeah, it was. Now
I would be very nervous.
Very funny.
We were very nervous because it was in the eastern part of Mauritania, and it wasn't a pleasant area. So, but we were with other people, so it wasn't. It was still scary, but we weren't alone. So that was good.
Well, I'm glad that worked out. So, how much water do you guys carry with you, and how do you manage water purification?
Okay, water. We only have 2 canisters with us. So one of them is 15 liters. The other one is 10 liters, and we just fill them up in reliable places. So like a hotel where we ask the owner if it's reliable. We don't purify water ourselves. So for example, we would use river water to have a shower or to wash ourselves or wash dishes and things like that. So we don't really worry about that part. Obviously, to drink, we only fill up our water canisters from reliable places, and that is the information we get either from people locally or the iOverlander app as well, because that usually marks the water as potable or non-potable or things like that.
Also natural water sources.
Yeah, natural water sources. If in mountain areas, usually you have a source like water coming out from the mountain, basically on a small tap. Usually, it's usually very good. We don't question those kind of water sources, and with our water, we also tend to buy big buckets. So we don't buy small bottles of water. We buy the big, like 10-gallon water buckets or water bottles from shops, and that lasts for a while.
Okay, great. And do you guys use solar or a generator? And can you give us a little detail on what your electrical system is set up like?
Yeah, we don't have solar, but we have this. So we have 2 batteries. That's the original batteries in the car that starts the engine. And we have inside the cabin, inside the car, we have a 3rd battery with a management system. It's a device called the ArcPack 720. I think it's an Australian company who makes these. And basically, it's a portable power source with a battery inside. We got a powerful battery inside. I wouldn't be able to tell how powerful it is, but I went for the larger one. And what it does is it connects to your 12-volt socket in the car. We have one in the back, in the trunk. So this battery pack sits in the middle, right behind the seats. And it charges when you run your car. So while we're driving all day, it's being charged. But when you stop, it doesn't actually draw the car's batteries at all. So it's only one way. And we run everything from that when we stop and we set up the camp. So even during the day, when we drive, we tend to sort of not put too much pressure on the car's electronics and electrics. So we charge our phones, cameras, everything from this 3rd battery, the ArcPack. And then when we stop, obviously all our lights, the camp lights, the computer if we didn't charge it during the day, or the fridge, mainly obviously useful for the fridge overnight, is being powered by this device. And it's a very clever thing. I could actually attach a solar panel to it, but we didn't. We were planning to install solar panels, but then we didn't. Just it was time and organization that failed us to do it, prevented us from doing it. So we don't have solar panels, but so far we were okay. I mean, I could actually attach this ArcPack to just the grid. I've got a cable for it, and I could just charge it even if we stay somewhere for a week. I wouldn't drain the whole battery. And we stayed, I think it was 6 days in Mongolia in some place, where I didn't actually attach it anywhere. Like we just used the battery itself, and for 6 days it worked. So,
oh, wow. Okay. Very impressive.
So that was pretty good. Yeah. That was
What
good.
refrigerator do you guys use, and any tips you've got on selecting a refrigerator?
Yeah, we've got the Angle 43-liter fridge. I went for the Angle because I read some reviews and everybody was talking about the reliability of the Angle. I think they use a motor inside that just is like military grade or something like that. It's really, really reliable. So I went for the Angle. It's immensely useful. I would say on a long trip you can't get away with just a cooler box. You need a 12-volt fridge. A tip for that is actually to keep it always full, even if you put water in it, like water bottles in it. Just keep it full because it makes the fridge work less hard. So it doesn't need to work as hard because it just keeps the cool much better if it's full. We met overlanders who had, I think they had like 100-liter fridge in Africa,
Oh, wow.
which was complete in a small car as well. So like in a Defender, it was completely insane. I don't know why they had that big fridge. Basically, the whole back of the car was a fridge.
Yeah.
And it's just not needed. But yeah, size is definitely one of the main considerations when you choose a fridge.
Okay, very good.
And don't overkill, I would say that.
Any philanthropy, volunteering, or inspiring others that you focus on during your trips? Or any opportunities you've seen for other overlanders to do good as they travel in a smart and ethical way?
Yeah, there's a few things I could mention. Maybe the 2014 trip that I mentioned a few times, when with a couple of friends of mine we attempted to drive to Mongolia. That was actually a charity rally. We were supposed to leave our car in Mongolia and would have been converted into an ambulance. However, in Tajikistan we broke down miserably. It couldn't be fixed, so we had to leave the car there. We sold the car and then we donated the money that we got for the car to the same charity. And also in January and February, our African trip, we brought a lot of school supplies with us and handed over to children at schools. That's what we did. And also it was an organized trip, so the organizers, through our fees that we paid for the trip, also built a well in one of the remote villages in Gambia. So that was for the African trip. And during this one, I think the major concern that we see everywhere is the trash.
The garbage, yeah.
The garbage everywhere. So I would say the principle that we as overlanders should follow is leave it cleaner than you found it. I think I've seen it many times, and I see many overlanders doing it already, but I don't think it can be emphasized enough that this is a really, really nice approach if you do it. We've done a Balkan trip with the same friends that I traveled to Mongolia with before. And the Balkans is, unfortunately, you can find really beautiful campsites, but that means other people find it as well, local people, and they would tend to leave rubbish everywhere. And the first half hour or 1 hour of our camp night, camping every night would have been spent with collecting trash from the lake shores or river banks or something like that. And then we would camp because, first of all, it just felt good to do it. Second, it would have been impossible to camp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
so
point.
during
Love that.
our trip, we reduced our plastic consumption, especially the one-use plastic. And we also give some foods to the street dogs.
Yeah, we really feel for the street dogs, the stray dogs. So we tend to feed them everywhere we go.
I love it. Cool.
Oh, and we rescued the sheep. I don't know if that's an interesting story, but
Yeah, tell me.
we were camping. We camped at a riverbank in Mongolia full of big boulders next to the river, in the river and next to the river. And when we arrived, we saw this sheep just looking out from a hole under a boulder, but we didn't think much of it. We were actually laughing, like, look, this sheep is actually high, because the boulder and the space between the ground and the boulder, somehow it seemed quite big. So we thought, okay, look at this.
Yeah, he's just hiding
sheep
in there.
Yeah, just hiding in there. And then it didn't move for another couple of days, but we sort of forgot about it a little bit. And then we saw that he's actually, or she is stuck in there and just can't come out, because it went in on one side, and on the other side the hole wasn't big enough. So I don't think it could think that it could back out or something like that.
Okay.
So using our shovel, I dug a huge hole around the boulder, because the poor animal was eating the grass all around the hole. You could see that the grass is much shorter around the hole where he could reach with his head.
Oh, wow.
And, so we dug a big hole, and then the animal, I think, must have been numb or something, because couldn't get up, even though there was enough space already.
Or maybe he was scared.
Or I don't know, but couldn't stand up. So we put a hook around his...
But first we gave him or her some water.
Oh yeah, we gave some water, gave it some water to drink, and we put the water a bit away from him, so that maybe that will encourage him to move, but it didn't. So then we put a hook around one of his legs and just had to pull it out, and then the poor animal just left, but he couldn't walk first because I think his limbs were numb.
Yeah, if he'd been in there for a long time. That's great. This has been a lot of fun. Anything we've missed?
No,
I think something I want to mention is that if anyone is around in Southeast Asia or planning a trip to Southeast Asia, look into the regulations around Cambodia and Thailand in terms of driving in with your own vehicle, because it gets very complicated. Different temporary import permissions and customs documents are needed. So this is what we're working on right now, to trying to find out how we can go further, because it gets really complicated and difficult. We know overlanders who were turned away from the Thai border a couple of days ago. So we're working on that. And the other thing is shipping. So once we get to Singapore or Kuala Lumpur, we need to find out how and where to ship our vehicle, probably back home, but there's a small chance we ship it to Australia.
Let's wrap it up with some fun facts about you guys. Any new hobbies you enjoy as an overland traveler?
Not necessarily new, but I'm getting more and more into photography. So I'm sort of trying to learn that and like it more and more.
Yeah, for me the same, and I also love running and doing some workouts like body stretching and cross training. We went to the gym quite a few times at home per week, and now we are a little bit missing it.
Yeah, we are missing exercising a lot. We had these plans to actually exercise regularly during the trip, but we failed.
It went well until China, but in China we had this itinerary, this strict plan, so we couldn't we couldn't focus on, or we didn't have any time to do some workouts. But maybe here in Southeast Asia.
I would think it would make it a lot harder to do when it's super hot and humid too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna get any better from now. So.
But we have saw some gym. We have seen some gym on the streets, so maybe we will be lucky
to go.
Yeah.
What keeps your co-driver occupied on long drives?
Well, we share the drive, like half and half. So we try to vary it. That's one of the reasons is for the other person not to get bored. Originally, we planned to swap every couple of hours, but that doesn't really happen anymore. But still, we share it. We vary the drive. But otherwise, we listen to a lot of audiobooks, and the other person usually takes photos and videos. So it's just, we could literally record the whole trip. It's just so beautiful everywhere that the co-driver is always busy with taking photos and videos.
Do you play any musical instruments on the road or around the campfire at night?
No, unfortunately, none of us can. But I've got a couple of drumsticks with me, and I usually drum on the dashboard if there's a good song.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
Coffee, definitely coffee.
Champagne.
Do you have a favorite way of making it?
We have this Italian-style coffee maker. You know, the classic cast iron coffee maker, just to make an espresso.
Okay, great.
So I usually drink an espresso. Evelyn drinks latte, so we heat up milk for her, and then we have our coffee in the morning.
Yeah, but in China it was hard to find normal milk. I mean, a normal milk, not a sugar milk. Yeah, sweet milk.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And what's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day on the road?
Well, beer and wine. For me, beer. Evelyn usually drinks wine.
Yeah, wine.
Yeah, that's also just. I have lots of beer in the fridge just to make the fridge work less hard.
No, that's a good excuse to have a lot of beer.
Exactly.
What is your best advice to aspiring overlanders like us?
Well, best advice, if there's one advice, I don't know. I consider ourselves aspiring overlanders as well, so we are still beginners. So I don't know how authentic it is to give any advice to anyone, but I think if anybody is thinking of a big trip, and then always the trip is prevented by the usual problems of a job or something like that, then just do it. Still, just do it. It's gonna probably change your life, I think.
Yeah, and keep it simple. Yeah, travel light.
Yeah, well, keep it simple. But, well, travel light, but you got 4 caps with you.
For what?
4 caps, like baseball caps.
Oh, baseball caps. Okay.
4 of them.
No, 3. Only 3.
We gotta have
But
one for
they are
each day.
branded, so...
Sorry?
You have to have one for each day.
Yeah, no. That's what she said.
That's awesome. So, hey guys, how can people learn more about you and what you're doing to keep up with your travels?
We have a blog. We have a website. It's overlandsite.com. And we have the same, we have an Instagram account and Facebook page with the same name, Overlandsite.
Okay, great. Any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
Well, if you don't know iOverlander, obviously, to be honest, I haven't met any overlanders who haven't heard of it yet, but iOverlander is immensely useful. But to let your friends and family know where you are, and a quick way of quote unquote blogging is Polar Steps. Use Polar Steps. It's very useful, very nice application to use. It's all free.
I can't wait to check that out.
Thank you so much for your time. We are humbled that you've given us such an amazing look into your world, experiences, and knowledge. Safe travels and adventures to you, and we hope to catch up with you again in the future.
Thank you for having us. And
It's a pleasure for us.
Yeah, thank you. We will keep listening to your podcast as well.
Well, we appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Wowza. So if you plan on taking an overland trip to Southeast Asia, number one, really good information from Border Crossings to the company that they used for the required tour.
The Adventure Tour China.
Yeah, but what do they refer to it as? It's a requirement when you go through that you got a tour guide with you, I think is the right way to say that. So some solid, great information from Evelyn and Ferenc there. Thanks, guys. That was awesome. A couple new resources. So we've got a first-hand account of the Bluetooth GPS receiver called a Bad Elf. And that's not a joke, just coming out of Christmas. Actually, it is called Bad Elf. So if you are a longtime listener and you remember the interview we did with Ashley with Gaia GPS, she had mentioned that as well, but she was curious to hear how it was working from a user. So, and then we also learned about the application Polar Steps. And I'm just so excited to start using that. I've been way too busy to do it since we actually did the interview. I downloaded it as I was finalizing this episode, and hopefully tomorrow I'll start using that. But there you go. You've got a free resource to be able to share with your friends and family where you are in the world. Super, super cool. What do you say, Lisa?
I'm just really glad that they saved the lamb.
Yes, they saved those. That was a very nice story. The lamb was stuck in the rocks.
I would want to save all the animals. We'd be traveling with a pack of a farm.
So we hope you had a wonderful Christmas. If you're listening to this on the day that it goes out, a very happy new year. All the best to you in 2019. One thing we would ask is, as we usually do every year, we kind of mix things up going into a new year. So aside from the interviews we've already got pre-recorded that will be coming out through the rest of January and February, we're looking to do some new things. So reach out to us. Send us a DM on the social medias, Instagram or Facebook would be the two best places. Or send us an email at ghteoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you would like to hear, and you can have a driving force behind the questions that we ask for the next 12 months. Ferenc and Evelyn, thank you so much for taking your time to coordinate the interview with us. We greatly appreciate it. We're humbled that you would take the time from Southeast Asia to connect with us all the way in Washougal, Washington. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghteoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Overlandsite episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you.
And remember, we'd love it if you'd connect with us on social media. You can very easily find us at GHT Overland. To be specific, if you're on the Insta, GHT Overland Podcast. Be sure to share the episode with your friends who enjoy travel off the beaten path, or just really anybody you come across. Overland travel is all about meeting new friends, seeing the most amazing places on Earth, and of course, new food and new drinks.
Do you have a favorite drink or food recipe for overlanding? We'd love to feature it and you. Send them to ghteoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. Before you race off, it would mean the world to us if you'd rate and review the podcast. Give GHT Overland a little iTunes love so we can reach as many overlanders as possible. Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for a brand new episode of the GHT Overland Podcast. Bye.
Happy New Year, everyone.